Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depends where you're watching us from. Welcome to Blue Sunday, brought to you by the people from In the Blue Corner on the Jumper Punch. My name is Joseph Luzza, and as you can see, I'm in some tropical gardens. I'm here in the town of Hua Hin, which is about 300 kilometres south of Bangkok. And with me tonight, we've got Mr. Rashid. How are you tonight, Rash?
I'm very well. Good to see you, Joe. You've got a beautiful view there, mate.
I'm just waiting for the birds. And Rash, can we wish all the mothers a very happy Mother's Day? Hope they've all had a great day.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Just hang on. Yes? Really? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some breaking news. Don't say we don't give it to you. He was managed. However, unlike the Carlton Football Club, 2 weeks has turned into one. Welcome, Mr. Vince Loccisano. How are you, Vince?
Good evening, Joe, and good evening to Rash, and great to see you back again this week. And yes, I've managed to come back into the side. So after a week off, it was a 10-day stint in hospital, but I'm back out and hopefully I'll last the duration of the show.
Well, you know, we're a bit like the Carlton medical team here, Vince. You can't believe us. We thought you were out for, it said 2 to 4. You know, yes. Rocco, our executive producer, told me 2 to 4, and next thing you know, you're at training.
Yes, well,
anyway.
My fellow cancer victim, Sam Doherty, suggested to me to make it look like it's 2 to 4 weeks, and before you know it, you're back in the side.
Well, there you go. Hey, Vince. Well, let's get down to what we're here for, the football. So we've had round 9 completed. Let's quickly go through the scores of the other games.
Yes.
First game.
Well, first game, of course, was on Friday night, and no Thursday nights at the moment, so a bit of a break from that. And we saw a resounding victory by the Richmond Tigers, 16-6, 102, defeating Geelong, last year's premiers, 11-12-78 without Patrick Dangerfield. And that was a pretty big win by the Tigers.
Then let's move to Saturday.
Yes, indeed. On Saturday, we saw a big win to the Gold Coast Suns over there in the West. Looks like the West Coast Eagles are going to be doing a lot of very hard yards in the next couple of years. And, of course, Gold Coast kicked 10 goals more and 10 points more. 16, 17, 113 to 6 goals, 743, a 70-point victory.
Next game.
Yep. We had the one of the upsets of the round with the Fremantle Dockers travelling over to Sydney and knocking over the Sydney Swans on their home patch. 13 goals, 8 Sydney, 86, defeated by the Dockers, 16-7, 103.
Next.
Big 17-point victory. Next one, of course, was over there in Hobart at Blundstone Arena, where we saw Jason Horne-Francis go up against his old side, and they absolutely smashed them. There's another result, again by 70 points. Again, it was 10 goals more and 10 points more. 20 goals, 15, 135 to 10-5, 65. North Melbourne, after a very promising start to the year, have been hemorrhaging for the last 7 weeks.
Whoops. Go back one. Sorry. Then we had
the Demons. The Demons rolling along with a 9-goal victory over Hawthorn, and a big win there. 15 goals, 13, 103 to Hawthorn, 7-7-49. The Demon train just seems to be rolling along nicely at the moment.
Then
we, of course, had the match at the Gabba between the Brisbane Lions and the injury-riddled Essendon Bombers. Brisbane winning very comfortably in the end, kicking 12 goals, 15-87 to Essendon, 6-9-45.
Followed by.
And, of course, today we had 2 matches with the Adelaide Crows, huge winners over St Kilda. That's a big win for them, 19 goals, 7, 121 to St Kilda, 10-9-69. big win to Adelaide, and that puts them back in the 8 now. And, of course, the final game of the round, the number one side on the ladder, Collingwood 120, of course, kicking the final score of 18 goals, 12 to the GWS Giants, 7-13-55. So a big win again to Collingwood today.
Yeah, some big winners on the weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we start on our match, let us introduce our special guest, 1979 Premiership backman and forward, Mr. Peter Brown. Good evening, Peter. How are you this evening?
Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Rash. And by gee, look at the comeback from Vince. That is just magnificent.
Great to see you, Brownie.
Well,
the comeback king.
You're an inspiration to the Carlton Football Club, Vince. It's just a shame that our players don't take the same sort of commitment out of it as what you do.
I don't want to let you down, mate. Don't worry about that. I'll always be back and doing my best. But, yeah, it was a bit of a disappointing match to come out of hospital for on Friday night. And, of course, on Saturday night, I couldn't believe what I was seeing in the first half. I thought these drugs are really powerful. They must be giving me some sort of hallucinations that Carlton don't know how to kick for goal. But I was watching Carlton player after Carlton player kick the ball, sideways, up in the sky, nowhere near the goals. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, I need to get my eyes checked. But that first half was pretty abysmal, wasn't it? Mm.
So, Vince, let's look at the score and then we'll check the ladder and then we'll go through some of the statistics. So if you'd like to read out the score.
Yes, indeed. Carlton in the end, 8 goals, 11-59, comfortably beaten on the final score, 11-13-79 by the Western Bulldogs. But, if you look at the quarter-by-quarter scores, the Doggies got off to a dominant start, kicking only 2 goals, 2-14 to Carlton's 3 points in the first quarter. I thought we were very lucky even just to be 11 points down. And then, again, they kicked another 2 goals, 2 in the second quarter to go to 4-4 at halftime. And Carlton kicking only 1 goal for the half, 1 goal, 4-10. But despite only kicking 1 goal, 4-10 for the half, still only 3 goals down. And the margin was still very gettable. The third quarter ended up being the comeback quarter for Carlton, kicking 4 goals, 4 to go to 5-8-38. And that's after the Doggies had sailed away with the first 2 goals of the quarter. And then Carlton came back and kicked the next 4. So they went in with a lead 6-10-46 to 5-8-38. It was only 8 points at three-quarter time. And the question on everyone's lips was could Carlton come back and actually win the match? And they looked like they might have just done it too by hitting the lead at one stage there in the final quarter. Then the Doggies got the lead back. Then Carlton got the lead back again through another goal to Charlie Curnow. But then, of course, the Western Bulldogs seemed to click into action in that last half of the quarter and kick the final 4 goals of the match to run out pretty comfortable winners in the end. So it was, a game of momentum shifts, but a lot of mistakes made. And in the end, I think, when you only kick 1 goal for a half, you can't expect to win too many games of football, can you?
No. So there's the ladder, Vince. So that loss puts Carlton out of Carlton's loss and Adelaide's win today means that we are now 9th. So if you'd like to, so we've got Collingwood first.
Yes, if you have a look at the tops of the top and tail of the AFL ladder, you've got the first 8 teams. With Collingwood having won, Melbourne winning, Brisbane winning, Port Adelaide winning, Western Bulldogs winning, and Adelaide winning. They're the only 2 teams in the 8 who lost their matches were St Kilda and Geelong, and of course Carlton, who were in the 8 before the start of the round. We also lost, so. Now we've slipped out of the 8, and then you've got Essendon having lost, Gold Coast rising up the ladder after their big win, Fremantle also winning their match, so they've gone ahead. Richmond, Sydney have dropped down to 14th on the ladder. That's a big story. And then, of course, the last 4 teams, GWS, North Melbourne, West Coast and Hawthorn. I think really from Sydney Swans down, I think you can just about put a line through. There you might disagree and say maybe Sydney deserves another chance, but 3 wins and 6 losses after 9 rounds. I don't think too many teams have made the finals after starting like that.
No. So let's go through some of the stats quickly. Also, I can see some comments coming through. Good evening, everybody. So, guys, if you've got comments, I'll put them up in a minute. I just want to go through the stats. I can see one from our mate Beachy and Sandra Cameron.
Yep.
So let's just quickly go through some stats. Then we'll get Peter's take on where it's all going wrong. So hang on. There you go. There's the disposals, Vince.
Okay, so Carlton's on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side. On the left-hand side being the home team, and the Western Bulldogs on the right. And I think what's interesting is that Carlton had still a fair bit of the ball. The disposal efficiency wasn't all that different. I mean, the total disposals were 367 to 362, so effectively the same amount of ball on each side. And the disposal efficiency, they were marginally better. But, it looks like both sides had their fair share of the ball. It came down to a question of who was who was able to convert their scoring opportunities into goals. And in the end, I think, they had a marginal edge in clearances, uncontested marks. But the other area, of course, is where the ball gets butchered. And I think that was the tail of the game. And if you have a look at the clangers, we had 54 clangers for the game. And that's a fairly high total, I would have thought.
You can have a look at the general possessions. They're contested, uncontested. It was a pretty even sort of match, the stats. Look, except for the hit-outs. We dominated the hit-outs.
Well, I've got to say, I thought Mark Pitnet really did well in the ruck up against English. And I think he at least gave our midfield group a chance to do something with it. But
his disposal lets him down, though. He
didn't get all that many. He didn't get all that many disposals. But from a hit-outs point of view, I thought he did a really good job in the ruck.
I thought Mark's game yesterday was probably one of the best ones he's played for Carlton. He gave our midfielders every opportunity to be in a situation where they could convert from his ruck work. The unfortunate part is that a lot of our midfielders find themselves behind their opponents, and as a result of that, they don't get first use of the ball. And that is really, really sad, because his actual ruck work, I thought, was very good.
Yeah. We can have a rant. We can all have a go at whatever. But, Peter, you're the ex-player. Tell me, what do you think is going through the minds of the players, probably, let's say, at halftime and after the game? You've been in this position, I'm sure.
I think one of the first things that Carlton need to do is that they need to understand that they're in a contest on any given day, and not be in a situation where they just turn up and hope that it's all going to drop in their lap. The other issue that they've got is that their forward setup yesterday was non-existent. In fact, at three-quarter time, Joe, I texted you last night, and one of the moves that was made at three-quarter time, at halftime, was to put Owie to full forward. And in fact, that actually gave them a target up front. And then they took the two talls out further. And in fact, one of the talls ended up sitting on the bench for a while, and that was Harry. And then what happened was that unsettled the Bulldogs' defence there at one stage, because in the first 2 quarters of that game, the Bulldogs' defence were just running too easily out of our forward line. Johansson, sorry, I nearly pronounced that wrong. He was creating havoc. Purely and simply because our forwards weren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is the defensive side of their game. And as a result of that, that's why the Bulldogs went in at halftime with a lead, and Carlton was in a situation where they started to panic. Now, this gets back to, and I believe that this is probably pretty true. There's an old saying that goes around: you play the way you train. Now, it's fairly evident to me that I've been very critical of the kick around the corner, as you all know, and if you're not kicking straight for goal, your percentages seem to drop quite dramatically, and particularly more so with our more experienced people. Harry Mackay, couple of clangers, even our skipper Cripps did exactly the same thing. And the actual camera showed Voss in the coach's box, and he couldn't believe what he'd just seen, which was abysmal. A captain has got to kick a goal, captain's goal. They call it a captain's goal for a reason, and that is to make sure that he lifts the blokes up and about. I really think, and I said this to Joe before, and Rash made the point earlier on, that some of our players just look a little bit disinterested. I call it entitled, and I've been a massive critic of big contracts where people can just seem to sit back and not have to perform week in and week out. And I made the point last week where our list drops off dramatically after probably our first 22 or 23 players, and there's not enough pressure being put on those players within the side.
And hence the reason why some of these names don't get dropped. I mean, we were talking off air, drop this bloke, drop that bloke. They probably should be dropped, but the problem is you can't just gift games to players in the twos either. So one guy has asked a question. I put it up before, and it's aimed at you, Pete, and I just want to see if you can answer. It's from Cameron, right? And he says, Peter, what essentially is the problem with our team? Is there one definable issue or several?
Well, I think
can you answer,
several.
Cameron?
Well, Cameron, to your point, I think there is several defining issues. One of them is that and I've said this before in the past, one of them is we don't have leadership on the ground. That's the first thing. Obviously, strong leadership off the ground is very important. And I think really Carlton's got to make up their mind whether they want to be a corporate organisation or whether they want to be a football club. And I know that corporate organisations are very important. However, there's got to be a separation of being able to perform on the ground and have a successful franchise going, such as the club. Now, the other thing that I find interesting is that, and maybe I might be wrong in suggesting this, but a player that doesn't look hungry or looks disinterested is not really good for the rest of the players around. If you've got younger players coming through the ranks and they've got senior players, I call them senior players, that are supposed to be playing the game at the top level, and they see that type of effort coming from our senior players, and I'm talking about our leadership group. I'm talking it right down from the top, right down from the skipper, right down to, probably number 10 player, if you want to call it. And if they're looking like, and Rash picked me up before when Joe said that they look disinterested, whereas I call it entitled. And I just think that this sort of thing is a cancer. And the old saying goes that winners, they create positive attitude. Losers create negative attitude towards the game. Now, it's almost like they turn up to work and put their hand out for their pay pack, but they don't have to do bugger all. It's like we've been locked down here for 2 years with the state government, and everyone started working from home, and everyone thought, well, when things try and get back to some sort of normality, well, maybe I can still stay at home. And I mean, to me, you turn up, you play a game of football, you should be absolutely spent by the time you come off that ground. If you're not spent, you haven't done what you're supposed to be doing and what you're getting paid for. And another important point was brought up to me by someone that doesn't have any football interest at all. And the question was asked of me, don't these players get paid an exorbitant amount of money and they don't perform?
Yep.
Well, that's an interesting point because Rash, I'll bring you into the conversation here. Earlier, I can't remember. I think it might have been Cameron again. Someone says that the Collingwood Football Club have a psychologist that sits on their bench, right? And when players come off and on, she talks to them and sort of, must hear their feelings. Someone said, "Where's ours? Do we even have one?" Do you know anything about this, Rash? I mean, being in that mental space, I mean, it's all well and good that we all say, "Oh, you got to perform," but we all know that sometimes it's up here.
There's a difference I just want to make clear, and I've told Vince this before off air. It's having a psychologist is one thing with welfare and etc., but having a high performance mental coach is something else. So I understand that.
What's the difference, Rash? What's the difference?
Psychologist is working through their problems, and if you think of a typical psychologist who sit in their room and tell me about it, and they keep on talking about their problems, and it usually goes over an 8 to 10 weeks sort of period where what I do is on a mental high performance is go to the root cause, what the problem is, and work on it immediately.
It's always your parents.
Yeah, well, or the school, or bullying, but there's a whole bunch of different things. But and then also that information to come back and say is whether or not that person's coachable mentally to improve and set goals and a whole bunch of different things. I know that Richmond do it, and we're doing it for so long. And there's a woman named Dr. Emma Murray, and she's in the rooms. And I know personally from Basher Hooley that used to tell me, like, if he was injured or something, or they have a couple of key words that they would do, and they reinforce it. Just to reinforce and reinforce and reinforce. And that's what that mental coach is there for. And I'm pretty sure Carlton don't have it.
Do we need one?
100%, because all the high performance sports these days, they understand the importance of it. It's only one part of it.
Rash, can I ask a question? Sorry, Joe, but can I ask a question?
No, go for it.
Because it's in your field, Rash, that's more than anything else. You think these guys get actually built up more than what they actually are? I mean, do they need a few home truths every now and then to keep them grounded? Do they actually need someone to pull them up every now and then if they're not performing well?
100%. It is. It's all about that home truths. You've got to do that. I mean, Richmond's got this famous story they did in 2016, I think it was, when they finished 9th or for the 8th time in a row or whatever it was, and they went on this retreat and they just did this home truths, and they were crying. I heard this from Basher, crying and just really opened up. And when they had the home truths, like, you're not playing good enough, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, connection made them even stronger, and they won flags.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, I don't know whether you caught the interview with young Nick Dacos today, right? Nathan Buckley actually interviewed him before the Collingwood game. And I thought it was really, really interesting that here's a young man that's probably just turned 20. He's having an exceptional year. We all know, how good the kid is and stuff like that. But one of the things that he's encouraged to do, and it's all Collingwood players, just not Nick Dacos, but they've encouraged them to be vulnerable. And, when I was playing footy, the vulnerability of blokes wasn't around back then, right? So, I mean, we're in a situation where we never spoke about our feelings. We had a crack at one another, and, you knew yourself whether you were performing poorly or whatever. But like I said last week, if you're performing poorly, you can still contribute to the team by turning your game from an attacking player to a defensive player and still be able to contribute to the team. This is something that Carlton don't do. I've seen time and time again where players that lose a contest, they just seem to drop their bundle. They don't seem to fight on and scrap and scratch and bite and goodness knows what else to bloody well make sure that they try and lock it in, or at least try and make a contest of it. And I just find that just staggering as to why so-called players aren't doing those sort of things.
But Brownie, and I'm sure even your days in the late 70s and stuff, you're a product of your own environment, right? So they're not doing it because the environment they're around or whatever they're learning. Here's what I think. I think there's a bunch of different problems, several problems, but it's the environment of growth and setting goals and all that sort of stuff, but also being humble and actually those home truths that are probably not getting done. Because
well, may I say, Rash, if you're making the comment about the fact that they're a product of their environment, let me tell you, the Carlton Football Club have the state-of-the-art facility, and Joe, Vince, you could probably
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have everything at their disposal, and I'm talking about performance equipment. I'm talking about basically an indoor AstroTurf football ground in their environment, of which apparently they play chess with. Everyone stands out on this ground and then they move them around. And if this happens, that happens. And if you go there, that means that you've got to run over here and you've got to run over there. Well, clearly it's not working. And I believe, and from what I've been told, I believe that they have probably, and I don't know, so I'm only be guessing, but I would say they would employ 60 people at the club nowadays. They've got assistants to assistants, and they've got media people, and they're probably sitting there monitoring what we're saying tonight through their through podcasts and goodness knows what else. But let me tell you, at the end of the day, you still got to get the bloody ball. You still got to win games.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
Go on,
Brownie,
Rash.
one thing of this is just that when I say product of the environment, what I'm saying is, yes, you've got all the resources possible. And I'll give you an example. The kid's got a rich father and he's got all the resources. Goes to the greatest schools, everything else, and becomes a drug addict. I mean, you can say, but he's got everything. He's got all the resources. It's not about that. So resources are one thing of going, you have, a great facility, etc. But it's a combination of things to get them to be the best that they need to be at. And sometimes,
look, that might be the case, Rash, and I don't disagree with you, because I did say at one stage that the game is probably played 90% above the shoulders and 10% actually physical. But let me tell you, at the end of the day, there's still a football game to win. Now, are these too soft? Are we not hard enough on them, or what's the go? I mean, are we in an environment and in society where people can't handle the truth anymore? Is that what
maybe
we're in?
The game plan's too technical. I mean, someone's just written up, you need to play on instinct as well. I mean, the amount of times it bugs me that someone kicks a goal and he sprints straight off, and then when they ask the coach, he says, oh yeah, that was a planned move by the rotations coach or the physical coach. Bullshit. They don't know that at the 36-minute mark, Peter Brown's going to kick a goal. We're going to move him off. I mean, Pete, you played. How much of a high are you on when you kick a goal, especially a good goal?
Adrenaline's rushing.
What's the first thing you want to do? You want to get that ball again.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be sprinting to the boundary line. It's the last thing you want to do.
It was actually proven last week, and I think it was Owie that kicked. No, sorry, it was Motlop. Mm-hmm. I stand corrected. He kicked a goal, and the next thing you know, he sprinted to the boundary line, sat down. They brought Mackay on. There was another contest that went down there. The ball hit the ground, and away Brisbane took the ball. And this is when you need the players up and about. This is when you actually do want people that are on to actually be a part of it. And there's nothing wrong with being passionate. There is nothing wrong with wanting the next contest. Goodness gracious me, I would rather have 18 players out there that want the next contest. And, if a runner comes out, or if there's a message that comes out to say that you've got a bloody, well, go and sit down, tell them to get stuffed and don't annoy you. And, I'll get the next ball that comes down.
Mm.
Well, the Bulldogs yesterday, I think, what's his name? Anthony Scott. He kicked 2 in a row. Now, if he's off the ground, how's he going to kick 2 in a row? He can't.
Within about a minute and a half, Joe.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, Vince, I know Vince wants to take a quick break. So, Vince, while you take a quick 5 or 10 minute break, because we know you've got a few things that you've got to do as part of your rehabilitation, we're going to just get you off for about 5 minutes, and we're going to bring on one of Rash's mates from the sandpit. So I won't take you. I'll just put you in the backstage. We're going to bring on one of Rash's mates from the sandpit, Ramo. How are you, Ramo? He looks like he's driving somewhere. Ramo, can you hear us?
No.
Can't hear you.
Sound.
No sound.
No sound. He doesn't look happy.
Ramo. Oh, he's gone.
No, he's gone.
No worries. Anyway, we'll let Vince. Oh, hang on. He might be back. Ramo, can you hear us? Ramo.
No.
I'll have to take him off. Maybe you might want to text him, Rash, and see what's happening. I'll bring Vince back on. He's obviously didn't go anywhere. Vince.
Well, I thought I'd wait just in case that didn't quite go to plan.
It didn't. It didn't go to plan.
It was. Let's just say it wasn't meant to be, Rash. Unfortunately, but it's a shame because Ramo is someone we've spoken to in other social media platforms, and he's quite a knowledgeable guy on football and very passionate about Carlton, and it's always worth listening to his views. But hopefully we can get him on before the end of the show. But look,
he's driving.
I just wanted to canvass this whole area of where do you address the issues that we've got? I mean, is Brownie, if I could ask you, do you see most of our issues being coaching issues and game plan related issues, if you like, structural or systematic type issues, or do you see them more to do with execution and skill level of players, which is very hard for the coach to have any direct influence over, isn't it? I mean, he probably expects that his players are going to be able to kick accurately on both sides of their body and that sort of thing. I mean, even decision making. Surely they must practice some of these scenarios that they're in, but you do wonder whether they do it all because they looked very hesitant in certain situations there last night.
I think first and foremostly, I think Carlton panicked. I just don't think that they've got clear direction in their mind as to what they're supposed to be and not what they're supposed to be doing. The other point that you touched on, you asked me whether it was coaching or whether whether it's the support group or the support coaches around the place and stuff like that. Interestingly enough, Vince, you sent me an article that Bruce Matheson was involved with, and he obviously didn't pull any punches with his interview that he did.
He's not the most timid bloke, Bruce Matheson. Yeah.
Well, and good on him. At the end of the day, people like Bruce Matheson and anybody that's in their heads of organisations, they expect performance from whoever they're either employing or whoever's playing for them.
Well, can I also put it to you that Bruce Matheson is someone who has for many, many, many years helped keep Carlton afloat by giving the club the rights to a revenue stream from pokie machines that it is basically around $20 million a year as a revenue stream, and the net profit from that $20 million in revenue is about $3.5 to $4 million per annum. So like any investor, he wants to see a return on his investment, and I think he's just about fed up with how the club's being run and how the club's being managed and how the team's being coached. And he's a pretty straight shooter and a pretty simple message that I think he spouted the other day, which is, I'm sick and tired of the non-performance, and I'm sick and tired of being directed and governed by a bunch of people who don't seem to know what they're doing. Well,
only from an on-field perspective, I will comment on that. on the board and that type of thing, I'll leave that for someone like yourself, Vince, that's probably had more of an intimate knowledge.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of the playing group and obviously the coaching group, what I would suggest that they do is that I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater as yet. So let's not.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I said at the start of the season that after the season that Voss had last year, I expected that to be taken to a new level this year. And now, I don't know whether the assistants that are with Voss this year are the same as the ones
they are. Essentially, they are. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then obviously those assistants haven't changed with the time of what's happening. Rash spoke about the environment of which we're in. Well, this is a different season to what we were in last year. True. We were taking the game on last year. We were actually smashing them through midfields and things like that. We had a brand of footy of which was exciting. It was at that particular point in time, it suited our game plan. What's happened is that year on year, what tends to happen is that sides start to work other sides out.
Correct.
And then they work out their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah,
I just don't think, and like I said before, the comment I made before, I won't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But let me tell you something. Unless there's some personnel changes made, particularly with the assistant side of things, because obviously the advice that's been given to Voss is pretty ordinary. Now, I've got an old mate of mine that lives in Adelaide, and I played with him many, many years ago. And he made the comment to, and I'll get this wrong, Trigg, who was a CEO or manager of Carlton at one stage. Yes. And he said to Triggy some time ago that whoever you get in to coach has got to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D, because if one's not working, then you revert to something else. Okay?
Yes. Yep.
And our coaching staff at this stage, all I see is plan A, not a particularly good plan B. We haven't been in a situation where we've changed some players around. For example, and I made the point earlier today, and I probably see, Joe, that you're just about ready to jump in, but the point I was going to make was that, if our forwards aren't firing, what I would do is put Charlie behind the ball. I'd even move Lewis Young up to full forward if you have to, but make some changes within the structure to be able to throw the opposition off. As it is now, yesterday what happened was that Bailey Smith and Waitman, they both started to cut us up in the middle. And again, I can only go back to the point of instead of being proactive, we seem to be reactive to the situation. And when you're reactive, it's easier to coach against than what it is if you're proactive, because if you're actually making moves through the game, then you've got your opposition coach guessing what's the next move that you're going to make. Yeah. So from the point of view, as I said, on field, I reckon they need a huge bloody psychological adjustment. And this thing of the comment was made just before. I mean, we still have to have a contest out there. We still have to have, you still got to beat an opponent. You've still got to win a game of football. So if you're in a situation where you've got one of those facets along the chain, or what I call it a chain, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if you've got a weak link along the line, then it's going to let the chain down, and then everything's all going to fall to shit. So, I still think that maybe if he hasn't got the right people around him, then he has to change that. We may have to change some personnel at the end of the season. One of the things that I said a couple of weeks ago was you may even have to have a captaincy change at the end of the season. You may have to even consider bringing Walsh in as the captain of the side, and possibly letting Patrick get back to perhaps a Pendlebury type scenario where he still can show that he's capable of playing the game, but doesn't have the responsibility of being a on-field leader. So
can you really see them making a change that radical mid-season and putting Patrick Cripps at a position of, almost embarrassment, really. I mean, it'd be pretty embarrassing for him, wouldn't it, to have the captaincy stripped mid-season?
Well, if you think about it, if Patrick was completely honest with himself, he would have to say that his performance this year has been well and truly below par. And I've said this before, excellent players or good players don't necessarily make good captains, or they don't make good leaders. So that's the first point. The second point is that you any modern game of football, you still need leadership on that ground. You still need a captain to be able to call the shots when you're on the ground. And if you look at what Collingwood's doing just at present, they've got Pendlebury, who's an ex-captain. They've got Moore, who's tried to put his own stamp on it and is succeeding somewhat. But bear in mind, the transition from Pendlebury to Moore has been fairly bloody seamless, given the fact that Moore knows that he's got Pendlebury as a backup around there. The huddle this afternoon, I noticed the huddle this afternoon, it wasn't Moore that was addressing the players. It was Maynard. Maynard was actually giving them a bit of a rev up and getting their minds on the job. So, you've got leadership groups around there, and I just don't see that with Carlton. I just don't see where who's got the opportunity to be the leadership in that in that situation.
Can I just say, just a quick thing, when you talk about leadership, one thing I liked was, if you look at the two players that we had in this week, was Cottrell and Always. And forget about Ed Kerner. I don't know why he was still in, but if you look at what Always did to try to pump them up, he almost did Tom Papley like. He pumped them up, he's busting his chest, and etc. And Cottrell was fantastic, and that new energy was great. I couldn't believe that they subbed off Ollie to put Ed Kerner. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Ollie was injured. Let's get one thing straight. I've seen it all on social media. They're going, "Oh, why would you take Hollins off? Why would you take Hollins off? He was injured." Right?
Okay.
So
quick thing. He's got Ramo ready for us. He reckons his sound is ready. So just
okay. Well, I'm going to bring him in. I'll bring him in. So Vince,
say hello to him for me.
Well, hang on here. I can only get 4 people on the screen. So
that's okay.
Ramo, we got some sound.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Good. Long time no see.
Long time. I was just listening to 5 minutes, and I was like, why do we always get together when there's absolute chaos at our club? Why can't we get together when there's...
So, Ramo, please meet Peter Brown. So,
nice to meet you.
Introduce him. Ramo's one of my good friends from Dubai that we used to do a podcast together. And so, the floor is yours, my friend. Give you your 5 minutes of rant, but please be nice as much as you can.
No, don't. Go, Ramo.
Nice to meet you, Ramo. Sorry, I haven't met you before.
Yes, mate, look, you guys have probably covered a lot of the things that I've been thinking for the last 24 hours, to be honest. But where do you start? Do you start with the board? Do you start with the operations of the club? Do you start with Diesel Williams being put in as a football director when he's not fit to do that role? You start with Voss and his coaching staff that are just in over their heads and not capable. The leadership of on the field with Cripps and Walsh, who just aren't up to it to actually be genuine leaders. Positioning of the ground, game plan. Where are we starting with this conversation in the end, right? It's just there's so many gaps in top to bottom at this football club. I mean, I'm lost for words how we could literally go worse than what we had when we were under T, based on game style, based on team selection. Match committee's got some serious answers for the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Where do you start? Just absolute chaos in my mind.
You said Walsh. I guess. I'm surprised you said Walsh. I thought you meant Wiedering. Was that a word stuff up?
Walsh and Cripps are the 3 leaders, right?
Yeah.
Wiedering's a whole different conversation. You probably had a whole podcast just to talk about Wiedering and how he's fallen off a cliff. And how it's impossible to be the elite defender in the comp 12 months ago before he did his shoulder, and now, based on form and not his name, he wouldn't get selected.
Yeah. Good point.
Oh, look, Sandra says, I feel they don't. Oh, let me put this up. And Peter, you've mentioned this. I feel they don't hold each other to account and have honest conversations. Now, that comes back to a couple of things. One is leadership, because, Peter, you were saying in your day, Peter Dean and a few of the other blokes, and I suppose Bruce still might have too, weren't afraid to tell you, hey, you effed up, right? Now it's all this, oh, well done, pat each other on the bum. Don't worry, don't let it get to you. I mean, I see it in all of them, but go, mate.
I was just going to say, I think that honest and direct conversation about and to the people that you're playing football with, if you're too precious not to accept some criticism, then you shouldn't be playing the game. This game is built on passion. It's built on physicality. It's built on being in a contest. Now, if you, for whatever reason, if you can't handle either one of those components of that, then you shouldn't be playing the game.
I agree, Peter. I agree. I mean, you mentioned being too precious. I mean, wasn't that the reason why all the playing group liked Teague? It's because Teague was nice, and Teague was just playing a sort of style and running training to an extent where the players were comfortable and not sort of pushed beyond their sort of limits, and that's why we're happy with Teague.
Well, before you come on, Ramo, I made the point that the people, they said, or Joe said, made a comment that they looked disinterested, and I said that they're actually entitled. So, and there was a comment that came up before, just flashed up on the screen some time ago, that these long-term contracts for football sides are a disaster as far as I'm concerned. I think that they really should be performance-based, and I think that, yes, give them a reasonable salary as a base. But then, if you perform week in and week out, then you're, and the old saying still goes, you're only as good as your last game. And, if you're performing poorly, you made the point before, Ramo, about certain players that have certain reputations and things like that. Well, I think our club now is moved past that, and I think it's well and truly past that, where reputations count for nothing. If Patrick Cripps is not up to it in the role that he's supposed to be, then move him and do something else. But if you do nothing, then you're not going to go forward. You've got to do something. You've got to try something. You've got to actually be in a situation where you've got to show people like yourself and Joe and Rash and even myself, for that point of view, that the club wants to do something to make improvements and to be where they can try and change what has been happening.
So who is that then? Because I think back to that Hawthorn era just recently, where certain players would drop back on their own accord without Clarko making that call, right? And they would make positional sort of changes to sort of just stop a game or just hold on to a game. Cripps is getting smashed in the middle lately. It doesn't seem like he can move. Is he waiting for Voss or someone in the coaching staff to tell him go forward or do something else? Or is he not empowered to say, I'm taking myself out of here, considering I won a Brownlow last year purely because I was a goal-kicking midfielder for the first time in my career, rather than just being a inside midfielder. He actually went forward and kicked a lot of goals. So that's when he was most damaging. Yet we've seen him take 2 inside 50 marks for the whole season in 9 games. So who's to blame for this? Or the lack of creativity and the lack of moves? Is it the players not being empowered, or is the coaches just not even having the imagination to make these changes?
I don't think players of today can actually think for themselves, to be honest with you. I think they've been programmed to think. Whoops, what's happened?
No, you're right. Keep going.
Oh no, my screen went blank then.
Technical failure at that Brown household, was it?
Sure, must have been, I think. I personally think that you still have to think for yourself. You still have to take responsibility for your own actions. And if you are playing within, this is a team game. right? Let's just get this really, really clear, guys. There's a big difference from playing as a team and playing in a team. So instead of playing to survive, how about playing for your fellow teammate? And I just don't think that I see that out of Carlton. I think they like to put out their hand to get their pay, but at the end of the day, I think they're not. They don't want to take responsibility. How many times have you seen someone in particularly in our back line, right? Someone might have been Wiedering, could have been Young, could have been anybody, it could have been Newman, right? That probably went for a contest but didn't go hard enough, turn around to look at the bloke that was behind him and saying, well, aren't you coming to support me? I mean, or, it's almost like, oh, it's not my fault. Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to take responsibility for it. And that to me, that just is not playing as a team, and that's not playing for one another.
Yeah, Ramo, you mentioned who takes responsibility for it, right? So everyone's going to say it's the coach, okay? But as Rash will tell you, it's really about the environment that is at the club, right? And look, I live here in Bangkok, so I couldn't tell you if this is true or not. To me, the environment appears toxic. It's the board are even fighting amongst each other. You got Dick, what's his name, Matheson, having a go at board members. Now, board members then not even responding. No, the CEO, Brian Cook. I thought, oh, thank God, someone with some balls. Now I get to think he was just a puppet for Frank Costa. Frank Costa was just pulling all his strings. He hasn't come. All I've heard about Brian Cook in the last 2 years, he bought $1 million worth of wine with some other board members. How does that help the club? All it does is just make people think, look at these silver tails at Carlton. To me, it starts at the top. It starts with the president. He's quiet. He's got to come out. He's got to say something. He's got to do something and say, these actions are not acceptable. We are a football club. We're not a commercial. We are in the business of winning premierships. And if that's not his motto, then he should go. Because I'm sick and tired of all these football clubs coming in. Carlton respects. And next week we'll probably respect M&M's again. And then the week after we might gay rights for whales and we'll wear a whale on it. That's all well and good. We can do all that. But at the end of the day, we are in the business of winning football matches. And if you are not there to win a football match, then you need to question yourself, what the hell am I doing here?
I think they worry about the image more
part of that.
than the game.
I think a big supporter base. Sorry, Rash. I think a big supporter base would feel indifferent to hear Sayers come out and be so direct in shaming the performance of the club, right? I would much rather hear it from Voss. I would much rather hear it from Voss and from Crip to say, hey, this isn't good enough. We aren't good enough at the moment. I don't want to hear about the learnings and the little things that we're doing well.
But that's all they do. You know, sorry to interrupt. You and I both know that Voss and Cripps will not say that. They will not, because it's deemed to be negative, right? No, you need someone with some ball. Do you reckon Jeff Kennett would stand for this? Let's say this was the Hawthorn Football Club. He used to come out and say, this is unacceptable, right? And the supporters loved it because he said what they're there to do. If we just want to be this feel-good club, I'm out. I don't want that. I can go do my own feel-good things on my own. I don't need the Carlton jumpers to have a bit of orange to say Carlton respects, right? Yeah. My parents taught me about respecting women. I don't need Patrick Cripps to wear an orange CFC. To me, the Carlton Football Club is a navy blue jumper with a white CFC. I don't need orange. I don't need to know about who the hell they respect. You shouldn't have to come out and say shit like that anyway. Anyway, that's just my thing. People go to yesterday I heard Rocco on Blue Abroad, right? And he said he doesn't enjoy going to the football, right? People go to the football to watch their team win. They don't go to the football to hear Carlton respects. They don't go to the football to see, Darcy Moore at the end of the game, although it was a great thing, get up and speak about how we're happy about the Anzacs. Of course we're happy, right? There's a greater speech it is. But he was there because they won. Didn't hear the Essendon captain get up there and speak because he was a loser. And all this, I was watching something on one of the other channels. I'm not going to mention it, where they say, "Oh, we don't use the failure word." Well, I'm sorry, the word actually exists in the dictionary, right? And until they take that word out of the dictionary, when you don't win, you lose. And if you don't learn anything, which we're obviously not, we are failing, right? We've missed out on Ramo. What we'll do is we'll get Vince back in. We'll get Ramo in on another day, and we'll let him have a rant. Vince,
I know that you were going to say something, Rash, but to me, if I may just make this comment and this observation, after the week that Carlton's had, and I'm talking about all the publicity in and around their situation, whether it be through the media or whether it be by word of mouth or even this podcast for that matter, for them to come out and actually not be able to show some real fight was really disappointing. And I saw Voss's interview after the game. And
he said we've improved.
And what came out of it for me was that even though probably he was bitterly disappointed underneath, he was still, to my mind, towing I'll call it the state government line, which was, yes, we took some, positives out of this and we took some positives out of that and stuff like that.
Yep.
Joe, Rash, Vince, Romo, all these guys, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear that there's going to be some genuine bloody change made so that at least they can hang their hat on. If next week Carlton come up against Collingwood and Carlton come out with, half a dozen kids in the side and they have a fair income crack, and I mean a fair income crack, and they get rolled, well, then they've tried something. But like I said before, doing nothing is not going to help. Doing something is at least giving some of the supporters and our club some hope. As it is now, that's not what we're seeing from our supporter group. We're seeing a different side of our supporter group because they're terribly disappointed with the performances that have been shown on the ground.
Agree.
Yeah, and look, Andy Hill's saying I'm not interested in listening to podcasts. Oh, sorry, I'm not interested in listening to podcasts that focus on negative. Every loss to an opportunity to improve, and that they need to make it happen. But do they? I mean, I'm not being negative. I'm just saying, okay, say that there's learnings, but we don't seem to be learning because we make the same mistakes. Show me a learning. If I could see it, I'd go for it. But
Can I ask you, Brownie, compared to the week before against Brisbane, where we really seemed to suffocate under the Brisbane pressure, did you see that our performance improved or got worse as a result of playing the Bulldogs last night? I mean, how would you compare the two performances?
Well, as you know, last week against Brisbane, we choked in the third quarter and we couldn't get it over centre half back. The umpire took pity on us and actually gave us a 50-metre penalty so that we could get over halfway. At least this week, we were actually starting to show some signs that we might be coming through the middle of the ground again. And there were, so there was a couple of occasions that we went in through the middle of the ground, we stuffed it up. Okay, all right. So that's one learning. So then what we have to do is that we have to go back and defend hard and defend as hard as you possibly can. Yeah. So from that point of view, yes, I think there were some opportunities.
So is that maybe where the Michael Voss, press conference, includes that sort of thing? Is that the sort of observation he's making, that compared to the previous week, we've improved in certain areas? I mean, it's it's unfathomable. So for a lot of people to consider last night's loss a better result than the previous week, but in a lot of ways it was. I mean, I must admit, I thought we were all at sea at halftime last night, and almost really lucky to only be 3 goals down at halftime. But to fight back the way we did, they even kicked the first 2 goals of the third quarter. We were 31 points down. It was 42-11 halfway through that third quarter. And then to fight back, and it wasn't anything pretty. It was just sheer guts and determination and, nose down to the grindstone. And despite all of the skill errors and despite all of the mistakes, we still managed to just grind away a few goals. And next minute, halfway through the last quarter, we caught up and actually took the lead. I thought, my God, we may very well get away with this. And in the end, we didn't. But I thought that there was quite a bit to take out of that too, to be frank.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought, and I think Rash actually touched on this. Cottrell, for example.
Yeah.
There's a kid that's probably worth keeping in the side.
He's got a tank too, hasn't he? He's got an engine on him.
The interesting thing was when I first saw him play, who he reminded me of was Robinson.
Yeah,
Robinson. Mitch Robinson, wasn't he? All arms and legs and
red hair.
But the thing was, all of a sudden there was this kid that was running around that actually started to, the opposition started to say, "Shit, who is this kid?" And they actually started to show him some respect. And Joe, you just talked about respect and all of that situation. I go back to the comment that I made last week, right? We're still not at the point where people in the football world respect Carlton as a football club. And that's really, really sad. And last night there were some signs that maybe we might be able to start to earn some of that respect back. But if you also listen to what Voss said, he also said that there were some poor decisions made at crucial times of that game when it backfired on us and they were able to score. And it wasn't by inexperienced people. It was experienced people that made those crucial errors at those crucial times of that game. And that's disappointing because in your supposedly leadership group, you need people that are going to stand up when the things are really tough. And if that means that they have to make better decisions, and if that means that they've got to bloody well show some leadership in that situation by making better decisions, then that's good. Now, I said before, and I'll say it again, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What you do, though, is that you make sure that you surround yourself with good people. And I'm sure, gentlemen, if you're in business, right, and I think this was, you take guys like Lindsay Fox, Bob Ansett, these sort of guys that were very successful businessmen in Australia. And I won't go too long on this, but I'm just making this point. What they didn't know, they surrounded themselves with people that they actually did know. And that's how they became very successful businessmen. Well, it's no different in a football side, right? If you are entrusted with that head coach role, then you make sure that you entrust your people around you that make you look good, not you having to do that, because you don't have the tail wagging the dog. You have the dog wagging the tail. So and I think that in this situation, I think that yes, there has to be a mindset change. Yes, there has to be some adjustments, and when that's done, then we will show that we're capable of doing it. And there could be some personnel changes as well.
Yeah.
Just quickly, we will get on. What have I done now? We will get on to the
voting.
Hang on, I've done. But first, Vince has got an exclusive for us.
Can I just make one? Sorry.
We've got the Carlton FC kicking coach.
Yeah. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, well, if I was Carlton, I'd have them out there, doing 100 shots each. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I would too. Anyway,
I'll tell you one thing. I mean, when you look at how many shots for goal, I lost count of how many shots for goal were made last night that either didn't make the distance, didn't even hit the target, went out of bounds on the full, went straight up in the sky. All of these shots for goal, even if only half of them went through, we would have won the match.
I know, but did we deserve
They're
to win?
very, very costly shots for goal if you don't get them right. And
Yeah,
they do
exactly.
so much work to create a goal-scoring opportunity that if you're going to blow those opportunities by kicking around corners and going for banana kicks when it's not appropriate and all that sort of thing, this is surely an area that Michael Voss has got to address with his players this week.
Well, there's nothing more. Oh, God, sorry, Rash. I
was going to say, you don't think that's confidence? Like, they're lacking confidence. Maybe the external noise is kicking through.
Mm.
They know how to kick those. Harry McKay's kicked loads of those goals before.
And I don't. And in fairness to Michael Voss, that's not an issue that the coaching staff per se, from a strategic and systematic point of view, can really do anything about. I mean, all they can do is create a game plan where if the players follow that, and 2/3 of it means getting it into the hands of a player who's then got a goal-scoring opportunity, and then he stuffs it up by kicking it poorly. Well, how can Michael Voss affect that?
No, I disagree.
No, exactly.
I think it's Michael Voss.
You don't think you don't agree with me, Rash?
No, look, he's not kicking the ball, but he creates the environment where he knows he'll know on training and stuff. They bring it to game day. He's got to use the resources to make sure that they can quickly, snap out of it and get back to. Yeah, I think that's a coach.
I'm not saying that he doesn't address it. What I'm saying is, if his game plan last night created how many inside 50s was it? 29 inside 50s in the first half, for Christ's sake.
For one goal.
And you kick one goal? Come on. Is that Michael Voss's fault?
No.
I don't think so.
Absolutely.
No.
That's what I'm trying to say, Rash.
Yeah,
no, absolutely not. That's not Michael Voss's fault. That is actually the player's responsibility to make sure that he gets paid to do that. That means he's got to kick goals. And the sad reality is that I don't know whether you've noticed Harry's approach to it of recent times. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know. No.
He's all at sea
with himself. He can't make up his mind whether he wants to kick it or whether he wants to throw it away. To be honest with you,
exactly right.
To be honest, I didn't watch the game. I watched the replay today, and I was listening to the Triple M broadcast.
Commentary.
And Joe Montagna was saying before the match he was watching the players warm up, and he said Harry McKay, Motlop and Curnow were missing every snap. He said, you know how they shanked them? He said, even in the warm-ups, they were doing it.
Yep.
And he said it at the first bounce. He said, the Carlton forwards will not kick a big bag today. And then he said, he's going, I told you in the first quarter, these guys were missing them in the practice. How do you expect them to, if they can't do it at practice, how do you expect them to do it under pressure?
Yeah.
But anyway, so be it. Let's move on to the votes because we can be here all night.
Okay.
Mr. Brown, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier in the podcast, I thought Mark's game in the ruck was exceptional. I thought that's the best game he's played for Carlton for quite a long time. Not only did he give us first opportunity with the ball ups and around the ground throw-ins and things like that, but he also actually had an influence around the game. Not though he probably didn't get a lot of possessions, but I thought that, and I said this last week, that English was probably going to be the X factor for the Doggies, and I thought he nullified him. So it wasn't Pittenat's fault that we didn't score better or create more opportunities for our forward line. Obviously, Walshy was one of our better players on the ground for the night. I thought his leadership towards the end of the game was a lot better. He was slow to start, but then once he got into his rhythm, I thought his game went to another level. He did kick a goal, which was pleasing from the midfield. And Kennedy was, for mine, was fairly solid all night. He was in a lot of contests, and I didn't purely and simply go on possessions and possessions only. I was conflicted a little bit. I thought Newman's game early was very good because he took McRae out of the game. But then he came back to the field a little bit once the more lively players were around, such as Bailey Smith and Waitman. So my three was obviously Pitnet, Walsh, and Kennedy.
And Vince, I'm sorry, I did a bit of a spelling mistake there, but you know who I'm talking about. You want to give us yours?
Yes, I won't take too long because we're already running short of time by the looks of things. But look, I gave Sam Doherty my best on the ground for Carlton. He, I think, shows a lot of the leadership qualities that I think we're looking for in a captain. I think we may very well have made a decision here because he did go out injured a couple of years ago, if you recall, and therefore the club decided to run with only the one captain, and they went with Cripps, and Doherty was basically, told, look, we're just going to run with the one captain, and that's it. He's not even in the leadership group officially, but personally, I don't look at titles. I look at leadership qualities that are displayed on the ground, and I think he probably exudes the sort of qualities that we are looking for in a leader. And I gave him my three. Mark Pitnet, for all the other reasons that you said, Brownie, I gave him 2. Excellent game in the ruck. And Ahmed Saad, I thought, gave us a lot of drive at half-back. Took some excellent marks, one-on-one, contested. Even one, I think, was almost like a one-handed mark.
One-handed mark.
In his elbow. But, he gave us some drive from half-back flank. I mean, I left Walsh out of my votes. I left Kennedy out of my votes. I left Cripps out of my votes. And Hewitt as well. But, if you really wanted to be generous, you could have thrown any of those in for one. But I ended up giving it to Saad.
So I'll just go through mine very quickly because everyone's given the reasons. I thought Sam Walsh was our best player. I thought Doherty was our second best. And Pitnet, however he wants to pronounce it. Good Xavier boy there, Vince.
Yes.
One vote. I actually thought Owies played a good game. He kicked 3 goals.
Yes, I was going to mention Owies,
He presented.
He kicked 3 goals.
The big boys didn't.
A little bit like the only shining light up forward, really. I mean, on a night when Curnow only kicked 2 and Mackay didn't kick any, I thought Matt Owies was quite prominent with his goal kicking.
Rash, I know you're not in it, but who would you have given your votes to?
I thought Sam Walsh was 3 for me. I had Doherty at 2, and I was really impressed with Cottrell. I mentioned that before. Okay. I thought he was great. Good energy.
So on our leaderboard, we have no change at the top. Charlie Curnow's still on top. We've got Adam Chera on second in 20. Doherty's moved up together with Walsh. Akers on 13. Patrick Cripps, Nick Newman, Hewitt, Pitnet, and Ahmed. Is it Adam or Ahmed Saad? Rash?
Adam.
Okay.
Adam, before we move off that too, Joe, can I just make a point about half a dozen of our players? Can I ask you all, what do you think these 6 players had in common on the night? Patrick Cripps, Charlie Curnow, Corey Durden, Adam Saad, Ed Curnow, and Lewis Young.
They all didn't get a tackle?
No tackle.
Correct. Not one of them laid a tackle for the night. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
What did you make of that, Brownie?
Yeah, that says what I said about our particularly our forwards. They're not working hard enough, particularly in defence. It's all very well moving forward and running forward when you got the ball, but there's a defensive side of your game of which is really important, and that's the difference between being in a situation where you put your back line under pressure or your mids under pressure because your forwards aren't doing a hard enough job.
Our 3 top tacklers were Doherty, Kennedy with 6, Newman with 5, and then you've got McGovern and Walsh with 4. So there's your top 5 tacklers for the night. So that's 5 out of the 23. So you had 18 players with 3 or fewer tackles.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I still don't know
what you
why
call
Ed
a defensive game.
I still don't know why Ed Curnow was our sub. I think I love Ed Curnow, and he's been a great clubman, but there comes a time where you need to understand when it's time to give a younger player a go. And I think the time has come. I mean, I don't know what they want to use him for, but anyway. Anyway, so that brings us to next week, gents. The old enemy, Carlton, Collingwood. Oh, sorry. Yeah?
Yeah, have we got brownie points tonight or what?
Oh, yes. I think I've put that in the wrong place. Hang on.
You can hear the birds now.
Thank you for that. I'm
well done, Brownie. Well done, Brownie. You keep him.
Beautiful kick from Brown. That's a magnificent
kick. How can you forget the most important
he was inside the centre square when he kicked that for a goal.
I just wanted to see me here again.
How could you forget the most important segment on the show, Joe? Come on.
Because I'm not using a mouse and I hate these touchpads. But anyway, the drum roll, please.
Well, to Rash's point before, my brownie points went to Cottrell. I thought his game was exceptional. And I made the point before. He did remind me of Robbo, and just the red hair, I think, more than anything else. But a kid worth actually holding in the side. His presence was very good. Rash made the point earlier that I thought that he demanded respect and when he was on the ground, and he was certainly a presence on the ground. So brownie points to Cottrell for the game.
Rightly so. And
a pretty poor attempt at spelling his surname too there, Joe, just quietly.
No, I've put the picture over the IE. So Vince,
right.
I had to do this down on the beach today. So as you well know, I'm in sunny Wahine.
So we're all having a bit of a shot at you this afternoon. That's all right.
Well, I might just cut you all off. So it does bring us to next week, as I said. Not on a Saturday afternoon, traditional time, Sunday, 3:20 or 3:30 at the MC.
3:20
at the MCG.
3:20.
I'll start with you, Brownie.
Carlton, the arch enemy, the one that. The side that everyone used to hate all the time, but now they respect. The arch enemy. Now, for mine, I think obviously the Collingwood side is going very well. So I go with my heart or my head in this one. I'm actually going to pick Carlton to win it, and I know that's a big call, but I'm actually going to pick Carlton to win this game. And the reason why I'm going to pick Carlton to win this game is very simply this. I think Collingwood are in a situation where they've got to drop one sooner or later. And this will be one that's going to bring the best out of both sides on the day. And I think our side, well, we've got something to prove. And there is no better game than to prove it against and to the football world than when you get 70,000 people at the MCG. And you made the point, I think, last week, Joe, when we were having the podcast, and it was a very simple point. Carlton supporters are very loyal, and they'll turn up in droves against Collingwood at the MCG for this game. And I'm actually going to pick Carlton to win it by the slightest of margins, but I'll pick them to win it.
I hear it's been sold out, but I'm not sure. One of the
it is sold out.
Viewers it is okay.
May I make this point, please? And I was going to make it earlier. If Carlton don't understand the significance of this game, next
as in the playing group.
Sunday, isn't it? Sunday.
As in the playing group.
Sunday.
As in the playing group.
Yeah.
Then they need to move on. It's as simple as that.
Rash.
I'm gonna go with my heart. My heart would say the Blues, but I'm not confident, to be honest. And I think the arch rivalry, I love it. And it used to be wherever we are on the ladder, we'd always have a great contest. So, and the bit of spite here is that McRae and Voss are also, now becoming the, former,
Well, they played together,
now.
didn't they?
Yeah. Well, they had a bet, I think, the last time or something.
Did they?
So that someone will take whoever wins, they'll take him out for dinner and pay for the dinner. So I reckon Voss. Yeah. So
Vince?
that's my.
I think I'm behind you two blokes in the footy tipping comp, so I better tip against what you guys are tipping.
There's no money involved.
Look, my heart always says Carlton. Doesn't matter who we're playing and how good they are and how poorly we're playing, it always says Carlton. But I'm going to apply logic on this occasion. And look, I just believe that as a unit, this team has seemingly, I won't say gone backwards, but it's been overtaken, if you like, by the other sides that are always improving. And I think last year we started the season in 2022 having beaten Richmond in round 1 and the Western Bulldogs in round 2. And this year we've gone and drawn with Richmond in a game we could easily have lost, and we lost against the Doggies. So I just think the shine, if you like, has gone off Michael Voss. He's had his honeymoon period, which was the first half of 2022, as most of our coaches in the last 10 years, in fact, have started with this honeymoon period, if you like. Now, it lasts for about half a season, and then all of a sudden we tend to plateau and then eventually start to dive down the other side. Now, I think that's what's happening with Michael Voss as well. And I think Collingwood will probably get the better of us to the tune of at least 6 goals next week.
That is the longest tip I've ever heard. All I asked for who's going to win, and I got a 10-minute.
Well, I'm explaining my tip. I'm explaining my tip because I don't like to tip Collingwood at any stage, especially against Carlton. But I'll go with my head this time and see if it helps me catch up to you guys on the leaderboard.
And I'm going to tip with my head too. I don't think we'll beat them. I don't think we're playing well enough. As much as I'd like us to win, my heart wants us to win. And I hope I'm wrong. I actually think that they are a much better running team, and I don't think we'll have the cattle that will. Well, our cattle is not in the same form. So, when I still don't understand why you want to put Jack Silvani in the ruck when you got Lewis Young, Harry McCoy, Charlie Curnow, who are easy, and then you've got Tom De Koning, who can't even get a game. And even Wiedering could have been in the ruck, and they throw Jack Silvani. I mean, anyway.
And the VFL team didn't play this weekend, did it?
No, they played.
They had a bye.
No, they played against a representative.
Yeah, an AFL Academy team. But what I'm saying is that they didn't actually have a game against another VFL team.
So he didn't play. No, he didn't play.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the tipping ladder. Brownie went for the Dogs last week. And me and you, Vince, went for the Blues. So
Brownie's gone for Carlton and you've gone for Collingwood. So one of you is going to have a 1 point lead over the other one.
Well, sorry, Brownie.
And I'll either be 1 or maybe even 2 votes behind the leader by next week.
Well, that's okay. Anyway, hey, listen. Brownie.
Just. And I said before that they've probably got media people which are keeping an eye on this podcast, right?
Sure.
So now the challenge is put before Carlton. Carlton's now got to rise to the occasion, and this rubbish of making excuses now is not going to cut it anymore. There's no more important game than what is facing us now, and if they don't rise to the occasion, then as far as I'm concerned, there has to be some changes made.
Yeah.
Can I say one word? One word. We're talking about environment. It's not it's culture. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, watch Ted Lasso, Belief.
Yeah.
Does anyone watch Ted Lasso?
Can't buy it.
No, I'm just saying, in Ted Lasso, that's all he talks
Oh,
about.
no,
But,
it's on Apple TV.
all right, well, listen, Brownie, we've kept you for an hour and a half. Once again, on behalf of the viewers and myself and Vince and Rash, thank you for joining us. We're always very grateful that you give an hour or an hour and a half of your Sunday to come on to this little show of ours and give us the benefit of your wisdom and experience. And I hope you're wrong. just so that I can claim bragging rights. No, I really hope you're right. So, Pete, thanks very much. Have a really good weekend. And we will see you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Rash. Thanks, Vince. Have a good week, guys. Hopefully, go Blues.
Go Blues.
Good on you, mate.
There he is. Lucky he picked me up on that. Well, now it's time for the fun part of the show. Ramo kept dropping in and out, Rash, so I don't know. We'll get him on another time, and we'll get him on a proper line.
He was pretty tame today, which is good.
Yeah, anyway. So now it's time for the fun part of the show. Do you know what it's time for, don't you, Vince?
It's time for...
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. I really don't like these touchpads, but anyway. So, Vince, last week you gave us Fess Up, and in true style, Fess Up got scratched.
Well, I got scratched from the show last week, if you remember. So the horse I tipped ended up getting scratched before the race.
Yes, so
anyway, so it was a non-event. It was a non-event.
It went out in sympathy with you.
Yeah.
So this week we have... Go for it, Vince.
Yes, well, I thought I'd pick one out at the Globe Derby harness racing meeting in Adelaide tomorrow, being Monday the 15th of May, and picked one out there, the pole marker number 1, Life is But a Dream. And isn't it so, Joseph, when you're a Carlton supporter? Eh?
It's more than a dream, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, well, I'm back in business, so I'm more than grateful about life. So I thought I'd go for that one. Race 5, number 1. It should start fairly short, so I'm going to suggest $25 for the win.
Oh, let us take us to the tally.
Out of our kitty.
As that was scratched, there was monies refunded, so we're still at the $50 mark. So, Vince,
righto,
this is the get big or get out. As I like to say, bet your house on it. Bet your mum's house on it. No, it's Mother's Day. Bet your father's house on it. Bet your car. Bet your kids. All right? Remember, you can't bet big enough. All right? That's my motto.
Geez, thanks, Joe.
No bet.
Gamble responsibly, everybody out there.
No, throw that. Get that and throw that over your left shoulder, right? Into the Trevi fountain.
Do you know Joe's real surname, Rash? Malloy.
No, he got it from
me. Like Mick Malloy from the front bar.
He got it from me. He used to be my neighbour. So
is that right?
He should be saying he used to live before he talks.
He used to live with Sophie Lee, a couple of doors down from me.
Half his luck.
Go to the pub. Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, that's a story for another day. So that's brought us to the end of our show, gentlemen. So remember, this week you've got the Blue Abroad show on Monday with Terry and guests.
Yes.
On
that's
Monday
at 7 o'clock
7
tomorrow night.
Yeah, on the Blue Abroad channel. On Tuesday, we've got our brothers, the Jumper Punch boys, on the Blue Abroad channel. I'm sure
should be a big show.
I think Rocco might be in for a bit of a rant, although he said to me today that he's not going to rant. They're filming the show as we are going to air live, but I'm sure Mars will have a bit of a rant because he's a straight shooter, Mars. Off a bit of steam, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then on Wednesday night on the Jumper Punch channel at Wednesday at 7 p.m, you've got the Forever Rivals where you've got Rocco and I can't remember the boys' names, but there's the
what an entertaining show. You've got Magpie Manny representing Collingwood. You've got Mark representing Essendon. and Quinny representing Richmond. So the boys always get stuck into each other. It's a great little show. If you want a bit of entertainment, a bit of repartee, and a bit of verbal stoushing between the four big rivals, Carlton, Collingwood, Essendon, and Richmond, make sure you tune in on a Wednesday night at 7:00. It's always good viewing.
Followed by the legends of the jumper punch. And Vince,
yes,
you were filming that this morning. Would you like to break the news? Who have we got on?
Yes, well, within a couple of hours of being discharged from hospital, I organised this one because we were desperately searching around for someone to do, and the Carlton Team of the Century Rover, if you can remember who he was, stepped up to the plate and agreed to let us do an interview with him at his place. Very, very accommodating and very, well-mannered man. He's just an absolute delight to talk to and to chat with and tell stories with. Adrian Gallagher, the former number 10 at Carlton.
Used to drink at his hotel, the Melting Pot. Remember that?
Yes, well, he owned a couple of pubs with Percy Jones back in the day, but of course he's a triple premiership player back in 1968, 70 and 72. Make sure you tune in for that interview. It really will be something to behold on Wednesday at 8:00, also on the Jumper Punch channel.
Then don't forget, you've got Blue Sunday next Sunday at 8:00.
Indeed, straight after the Carlton Collingwood game.
Vince and Peter Brown. We'll see if Rash is available. He might have something better on. I would.
Yeah, well, that'll be 2 hours after. That'll be 2 hours after the Carlton Collingwood game has finished.
Yes.
Well, I was doing the fill-in.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, Rash.
I was doing the fill-in while Vince was managed.
Okay.
That's
but
right.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome. So let's go through those again. Monday, Blue Abroad show on Blue Abroad channel, 7 p.m. Tuesday, Jumper Punch, Blue Abroad channel, 7 p.m. Wednesday, you've got Forever Rivals on this channel, the Jumper Punch channel, at 7 p.m. Wednesday at 8 p.m. you've got Legends of the Jumper Punch on the Jumper Punch channel. And then Sunday, you've got yours truly and Vince Loccisano here doing Blue Sunday. So, guys,
Indeed.
It's starting to get dark here. Can you hear the birds? The birds are starting to whistle, and it's really funny.
What a lovely background we've enjoyed tonight with those birds tweeting away.
It was funny. When I was setting up my station here, my lovely girlfriend was helping me and she saw a snake, right? She nearly threw the computer up in the end. What? She's going, snake. And I'm like, it was a bloody big one too. Lucky I'm not scared of snakes.
Well, we were doing the interview with Adrian Gallagher this morning, and guess what birds were hovering around his back window as we were interviewing him? Yeah, exactly. Magpies. Yeah. Unbelievable. Typical. So, anyway, it'll be worth watching.
So, on that note, it's goodbye from me in Wahin. Rash.
Au revoir from Melbourne.
Tibial. And Vince.
And good night from me too, also here in Melbourne, Australia. And keep following the Blues, everyone out there. I know it's disenchanting, but look, I think we haven't even reached the halfway mark of season 2023 yet. I don't think we want to jump to too many conclusions just yet.
No,
we can see that there's a lot of improvement in the side that needs to happen, but keep supporting the boys. Keep turning up to the matches. It's our third home match in a row this week, the biggest of the three against Collingwood, the old enemy, at the MCG. So let's make sure that we pack it out.
I don't know what's happened to Rash, but anyway, believe. So on that note...
Cheers, Joe.